No worries.
Howdy, folks. This is Jim Tremaine from DJ Times Magazine, and today we are going way out west, and by that I mean Los Angeles, California, to talk to the founder of the Deep Tech Los Angeles label, Mr. Jason Miller, aka Redux Saints. Before I introduce him to all of you, just want to give you a little background here. Jason formed Redux Saints as a duo in 2015, but has forged ahead alone as a DJ producer, making tech house, eventually forming the Deep Tech Los Angeles label, which has embraced the underground both with music and events. Miller is an alum of LA's famous Icon Collective Music Production School. Additionally, he was the first U.S. grad from the Toolroom Academy Masterclass, and it's from the Toolroom example that he's formed his popular label. Running the label with William Tejada, Miller is able to nurture the genre's promising new underground talent. Music from Deep Tech LA has been supported by some of the globe's top DJs like Claptone, Mark Knight, Roger Sanchez, and more. On the live side, pre-pandemic that is, Redux Saints has played a variety of gigs from London's Ministry of Sound to the Nevada Desert's Burning Man Gathering. And on the virtual tip, the Deep Tech Loft Party live streams have flourished on a variety of platforms, and Miller and his label cohorts spin the best in tech house, and techno. And welcome aboard, Jason. Thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Cool. So let's get back to your beginnings. Where did you form your love of music? Where did that come from? Where did it start?
I've always loved music. It's always been a big part of my life. Music started for me as the love kind of in high school. I'm originally from Chicago. And my brother and I used to go to every single Lollapalooza back then. So we were really big into grunge music. And then in college, I started listening to some industrial, which then led into like a lot of house, and then led into like really loving clubs. So I really got my starts in kind of the rock and roll grunge, and then moved into industrial, and then slowly developed the love for trance.
No, that's awesome. And Chicago has a deep background in all of the genres you just mentioned, you know, Smashing Pumpkins, indie rock out of Chicago. The industrial scene was always huge there. And everybody knows about house music. Do you remember a song, a moment, an artist, an experience that made you say, I want to pursue this?
In terms of music production?
No, in terms of I love this music. Like, for example, me, I heard the Beatles and I'm like, I want that.
Yeah, so my friend went to San Diego State University, and before I had a real club experience, for the millennium, we came down to Vegas, and there was a club series that kind of traveled throughout the West Coast called Club Rubber. And that was the first time I was a part of like where it was like a massive experience for me, where, you know, I might have drank a couple too many Red Bulls that night, but just like I just absolutely fell in love with the music, and that's kind of been the music for me since then.
Just a couple of Red Bulls, that's all it was.
Yeah,
right?
just a couple.
That's all it takes sometimes. Do you remember who you were listening to?
With my Minnie Mouse gloves and glow sticks, yeah.
Of course, right. Do you remember who was playing?
It was some trance DJs back then. I forget exactly who it is. Christopher Lawrence was big in the San Diego scene, so most likely it was him.
Yeah, Christopher Lawrence, Taylor. There was a lot of those Southern California guys who really got on the trance tip early. So how did you transition into DJing? When did that begin, and what pushed you there?
Sure. So you know, in Chicago, we would always go to after-hour clubs, or houses, actually, you know, after hitting the clubs. And I dabbled a little bit with the CDJs then. And then I started my software company in 2008, and took a hiatus from music. I was working so much that I said to myself I needed a little bit more balance. So I was looking at doing the opposite of the balance and going to get my MBA. And I decided against it and said, well, I'd rather do something that like I'm passionate about. So at that point, I took a look into music production school, as well as, you know, just getting back into DJing and making music a major part of my life. And I'm very glad I did so, because it's really helped balance it.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get into the Icon Collective and Toolroom and so forth, I want to talk a little bit about Chicago. What were some of the clubs that you were going to there? They've had a rich club scene for ages and ages.
Yeah. So Shelter was back in the day.
Sure.
Spy Bar, Vision. Vision used to have like all the big DJs come to it. I think Sound Bar was across the street from Spy Bar.
Smart Bar.
Yeah, I used to, literally, I think I would travel downtown on Friday and then, not much
Right.
sleep. Head to everywhere I had to be back to make work on Monday. So it was a great group. But what's nice about Chicago is it's a nice melting pot of people from all over the world. So I had friends from like every single country, and we were just going out doing a common thing, the love for the music. We didn't care who you were, what your background was, what job you had. We just did it because we absolutely loved the music and actually each other's company.
Right, and Chicago was also one of the markets that supported dance music on the radio as well, which I'm sure helped.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of like, the US versus the UK, not so much on the supporting, but, just being that it was one of the few places that actually had clubs you can go to see consistent DJs, the big DJs come in. Chicago was definitely one of those focal points.
Yeah, everybody came to Chicago. Yeah, I mean, I guess you don't go back as far as like the Hot Mix 5 and that kind of like 90s, late 80s thing. You would have been a little young, I guess.
Yeah, that I was very young.
Okay. Okay, let's talk how you moved into production, because I think that's going to probably be most instructive for our DJ viewers out there. What was the impetus that got you into that?
Right. So, in Los Angeles, my joke is that everyone is a DJ. There's more DJs than doctors out here. So in effect, strategically thinking like, well, if I really want to do this full time, how can I differentiate myself? The obvious choice is to learn production. Production to me right now is the only way you can truly market yourself in the sea of, where everyone's a DJ and lately everyone's a producer with the ease of the software to use it. But, it really came down to that, going to gigs and being like, I want to be that person, playing the music for these people on the dance floor, giving them that feeling, giving them that vibe. And music production was the logical choice for me.
Yeah, that's for years, we've been getting emails and inquiries from DJs who are like, how do I blow up? How do I get big? And there reached a certain point where DJing just wasn't enough. I mean, you got to put your name on a record. You got to, whether it's an edit, a remix, your own production, you have to distinguish yourself from everybody. And that's really the way to do it. And there's no real easy road to it. You just have to dive in and start swimming.
I think you also hit on a really good point, is that it is not an easy road. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think a lot of these younger producers, they look at some of these guys, especially guys who've come from Icon Collective, like they like blew up like in a year, became like the biggest DJs.
Yeah, they're like 19 years old. And they're big on the bass scene. Yeah, sure.
Right. And for me, I've kind of understood that it's a journey. It's like building a brand. There's going to be ups and downs, and it's going to take time. And when it takes off, it takes off, and it may take off for an extended period of time, but the journey to there is a lot of stress, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of no return on investment, but, for those people, I think that really stick in it for the love of the music, it eventually happens for them.
Right. And that whole 10,000 hours conversation comes up as well, where, you kind of got to know what the hell you're doing before you start to succeed at anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about what you did learn from the Icon Collective. For those who don't know about it, it's a music production school. Is it in Burbank or Beverly Hills? I can't remember.
It's in Burbank. Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of big DJ producers from Jaws, Nightmare, Slander, and I'm forgetting Keizo, I think. Maybe there's a few other ones. A lot of them seem to be sort of more on the bass tip, or at least if you go to the Icon page of their alumni, it seems like they're all bass jocks. But what did you learn from there? What did you take from your experience there?
So what I really like about Icon Collective is that it's a proper school for foundation of music. You can come in there with no experience, or come in there with some experience and walk out of there and you have a solid foundation of musical signatures, scales, all the stuff that, what I think sometimes people think is that you can just throw a bunch of samples up on
over some beats.
Yeah, and that's going to be, where something that connects to people. Well, but there's kind of like an approach to whatever music you're producing. Because not only do I produce tech house and house, I also have another moniker, Placebo Effect, where I do kind of more like melodic techno, and I approach those songs different than I actually approach like producing tech house tracks. But the training that they give you there, what I really like about Icon is really that they test you. I mean, like, you need to get a C or above on all your tests, or you don't move on to the next courses. I don't see that in the other music schools out there, where you have a potential of being thrown out if you're not keeping up with the work. So that's what I needed, with my busy life.
Challenged.
Yeah, to be challenged, to say like, hey, if you're not going to do it, and I'm humble to say I failed one of the classes, the air training class. I think I got like a 30%. Like I don't even know what letter that would be considered. But first I was just
F. Right.
Yeah, it's an F minus something. But I really thought that gave me a proper foundation. But if when we continue to have the music production school, you'll see is like, with that foundation, I needed then something to put that on top of it to kind of throw me into what the genre that I wanted to actually be successful at.
Did you see the school weeding people out at all? Was it so challenging that some of the people thought like, well, this is too hard for me?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for the standpoint of, we started with an X number of people, and it's a year course, which is different than a lot of other schools. But in terms of, the number that we started with, we didn't finish with that number of people. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people kind of, look at that as maybe an alternative. And again, it's all the hard work that you actually put into it. You'll see the results. If you put no effort into it, you're not going to net the results that you're looking for.
With your group of people, how many of them were in your age group, and how many of them were more into the, I don't know, I guess, melodic side of electronic dance music as opposed to the big booming bass side?
Yeah, so I would say there was two or three people out of the class of 19 people who actually were even considering something other than trap, dubstep, or bass. So I mean, I was definitely in the minority there. And if there was one thing I would say about Icon is that, because this was right after Jaws and all those guys,
Mm-hmm.
so you were getting majority of the people who wanted to follow that path and thought by going there, they would ultimately automatically become the next one.
Right. Yeah. And the joke still holds. I never thought I'd feel old liking techno, but but here we are.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean,
but there's a resurgence of that as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting though to see, what I've always seen in all the schooling that I've went, it's not necessarily the guys who kill it in the school are the ones who are still doing this now. It's the guys that kind of are like, the B, we're getting it, struggle a little here and there, or the guys who continued on it and became successful with it. Because I think the top people in my class are, they might be doing something related to music, but nothing on the DJ front.
Okay. So from all I've read about you, it seems like you took a whole lot from the Toolroom Academy Masterclass as well. It seemed to give you a bit of a template more for what you're doing now. Could you explain how that masterclass goes about? It's for anybody who doesn't know, Toolroom is a label, it's a brand, it's a lot of things. It's run by Mark Knight and a lot of other and a very considerable team he has over there. So what was that experience like for you?
So they have different classes. The master class is like an intense class where you work directly with a producer there, or a kind of a mentor, like D. Ramirez, or they had like I would say that they had a U.S. representative who did it. So essentially, you would work with them to iron. I think one of the things I struggled with first was just understanding the elements that were popular in tech, because tech house evolves, right?
absolutely.
What was popular in 2017 in tech house is not popular. It's actually the exact opposite of what's popular in tech
Much
house.
less 1999.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, at that time, it was like I was coming because when I first started producing out of Icon, I was doing kind of more like progressive house stuff on the UK side, a little it was the joking around because there was a guy named Pete Griffith there who's worked with Toolroom for years, and he kind of runs the academy. And he said, we need to have a progressive element exorcism with you because you can't stop. Like I had a problem. I always felt like the song was missing something, and I always had to put melodic elements in it. And you know, tech house, which I've learned to strip back it out, is really based on the bass and the groove. You know, the groove. If the groove is catchy, that if your head's nodding in the first 30 seconds of the track, you know, that's how I kind of pick my songs too. You know?
Bass lines, man.
Yeah. But also, and the other thing that I really got out of that program was like the importance of a vocal hook. The vocal hook, you know, in house, you know, in any type of music is how you kind of beat that stigma of people saying that anything sounds too much the same across the board. And I agree with that. And when we look for tracks in Deep Tech Los Angeles, that's specifically something that a track must have, is something to give the track identity. And I think if I really take what that main point that I got out of that master class is how to create an idea and an identity and put it into a track, because that's the most important thing out of the track, is it's something that someone can relate to, can remember, can actually say, oh, I look at the song name and I go, oh yeah, I remember how that song goes.
Right, and I think you have a track coming out tomorrow, Bad Like Me, which is real balance of like real kicking a bottom, but it's got a very soulful top to it, which is always something that's near and dear to me. But it does catch your ear in the first 15 seconds, I would even say.
Yeah, and that's because the groove work hours on that. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah, we'll get into some of the other tracks that you got coming out, but I wanted to follow up one more time on the idea of running the label and creating a brand with Deep Tech. What did you learn from Mark Knight and his crew?
Sure. So I got really lucky because I was part of the program for a year. And my program extended a little bit longer because they saw that I was trying to build not only the Redux Saints as a brand, but also a label as a brand. So what was really cool is my early days, I got lucky and I got some stuff on their compilation releases, but I worked directly with Miles Shackleton, who runs the branding and marketing for him. And I got to see what they got to do like day to day, you know, how do they push releases? You know, what do they do to push releases? You know, what works and what doesn't work. And, you know, I've really taken that approach for how we do stuff with Deep Tech Los Angeles.
Give me an example, something maybe that you use directly from them that has worked for you.
Sure. So how they roll out their promos, promo videos, they are very consistent. That they always assume that, you know, they want to give you everything so that it's your bad if you didn't promote it enough, basically what I'm saying.
Sure.
So I create banners, I create pre-order videos, I create release videos, something that like labels used to do back in the day, you know, but they've kind of skimmed back because there's not that much money in the music sales to cover it, you know, a lot these days. But we still do that. We provide a release promo schedule that tells them exactly when things are going to come, what to expect. We do full press and we do full promo. So we, you know, the way I look at it is, and this is what I got from Toolroom, is that we're looking for a release with us, whether it's a single release or a comp, to be an experience, to say like, damn, you know, I want to release with them again. And we do get some very great, you know, emails from people saying, you know, we just got one recently from some guys, we really are impressed with how you do it. That for me is kind of the fulfilling part of it, is when, you know, I took what I learned somewhere and now I'm emulating it and I'm getting the same feedback for it. So knowing that I took it to the right direction.
So what is your A&R process over there? How many people are listening to music? How do you whittle it down to something that's worthy?
Yeah, A&R is kind of a meticulous process that we do over here. William Tejada, and who's my label partner, we set up time, try to do it every Friday. Doesn't always happen every Friday. But we have a demo box that people submit stuff to, and we also, obviously, word of mouth comes through many emails or messages. I mean, I would have to say that every single method of communication, I have gotten a track sent to me, WhatsApp, right. You know. So yeah, we typically do it, and in that process, there again, like I mentioned before, the groove has to be good in the track, whether we're signing a melodic techno, a techno, or a tech house track. And there also has to be a vocal hook in it. And those are kind of the things that we first look at. Now, the second part of that too is also to see, are they active on social media? I get in some Facebook fights sometimes. I always tell myself I shouldn't do it, but I always get into some of these conversations where, like, where some people say, oh, if the music's good, they should just sign it. And I'm like, there are various things. People sometimes forget a label is a business, and that the goal of a business is to make money or cover your expenses, depending on how.
And stay alive.
Yeah, stay alive, exactly.
Right.
So wanting a artist to have some reach and potential generate sales, or be able to put on your lineup because people want to come and see them. Those are factors that go into signing tracks. And I think any label that says that they don't do that is kind of full, full of it.
Well, being an underground label is kind of a tricky thing. You're talking about Facebook fights. I mean, that is the land of Facebook fights.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was just funny because I think what magazine just came out explaining, Resident Advisor just came up with explaining tech house. Did you see that video?
No.
Oh, okay. But I mean, immediately after they posted, the techno snobs came out, and it was just like, and I'm just like, wow, everyone's got an opinion, so it's kind of like
there's nothing funnier to me than going to like one of these festivals that the magazine has to do, and I have some 19-year-old like reading me the riot act about something. It's like, okay, whatever you say, man, but your opinion's going to change in a year.
My joke always about that when I disagree is I'm like, yeah, this is the guy who thinks Skrillex invented house music.
Yeah, house music, exactly. No disrespect, Sonny, we love you. So let's talk a little bit about how creating a brand is more than just the music. It's also events. It's also sort of keeping yourself out there. How do you do that beyond the music? And talk a little bit about some of the events that you were doing pre-pandemic.
Sure. So pre-pandemic, we were doing some branded parties, in the Los Angeles area. But, where you start with any type of branding stuff is like the imagery that you want around DTLA. And, what we were going with is like a lot of photographs of like the urban landscape of downtown Los Angeles.
Sure.
So I just happened to piggyback on that well-known acronym already. But, we were doing events all over Los Angeles. And, in terms of, the label's still young. We started it in April of 2019. So, in terms of doing major events, we hadn't broached on that yet. However, we do have lots of stuff lined up for residency in Vegas coming up, as well as, some other very exciting things. But, we did events in Amsterdam for the ADE. We've done other events in other various cities as well.
Right. And you were doing some live streaming during the pandemic as well, right?
Right. We basically it was out of my kitchen.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I was lucky. Like the story behind my building is that it used to be a UPS. It was the first UPS distribution. So all the walls are very thick concrete. So I could actually like play music at like a club level in my place without my neighbors.
You can blare and blast and no problem.
Which has been a problem for me at other places I've lived. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we started throwing that monthly. We also have done a couple live streams with a kind of production firm called Stream City, where they have kind of a production studio in Orange County. The Deep Tech Loft Party was kind of, what we needed to do just to continue getting the word out that we had music, that, I was DJing, that we brought in guests eventually to DJ. It was also to keep William and I sane. Like, Los Angeles has been completely shut down for most part for any type of gathering since last March.
Right.
So, we needed some way to get that energy out. And I think that
to reconnect with people.
Yeah. We do, So, I mean, other thing is to there's nothing better than when you have a release, having a lot, some video of you doing it live. So we kind of used it as video release promos and such but I think, my personal opinion on some of the live stream stuff is though that's what everything was going. I think there's going to be a few that's kind of remain very popular post-pandemic because everyone's going to obviously be wanting to go out to clubs,
Yeah, absolutely. And, live streams have taken on their own personalities. I mean, you could have Diplo playing in his den. Yep. You could have Cascade playing at the Grand Canyon. You could have David Guetta playing at whatever that hotel is in Dubai. So you have all kinds of flavors. And at the end of the day, for me, it just comes down to the music because I end up not paying attention to the video after a while, to be honest.
Right. So one of the things we tried to do to differentiate ourselves again is we created parody videos. We just, basically, I'm a big observer of trends and, hating and stuff that goes on in the internet because I'm on it a lot, for socials. And so we created these parody videos called Haterade Ointment, where you rub it on you and you stop hating genres of music. Or we came up with the DJ P Jug. The DJ P Jug was for DJs to relieve themselves in the booth.
That's not a parody, folks. That's really happened, I can tell you.
And then the other one was the DJ Stun Requests stick. So basically, anyone coming up, the typical requesters would come up and talk to you. Can I do back to back? Can you play music with no words? We kind of just made fun of it. Where then I was just reaching out and shocking them.
Can I give you a stun gun? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The nicest way possible you can make someone unconscious to understand that they should be doing that. But the other one that we did, which was took some time, was we created the DTLA Cobra Kai Dojo parody. So we tried to make it kind of okay, you're not going to just see me or another person stand up there and DJ, even though we had some nice effects and stuff like that going on place. We added some stuff. The other thing we did too is we also had celebrity endorsements. I got Charlie Sheen, Alyssa Milano, and a couple other folks to kind of do promo videos for it. So we tried to draw some attention to it by doing that.
That's not so bad. And, of all the scenes, the techno scene could definitely use a little levity.
Yeah.
So I love techno, but sometimes it is a self-parody. So let's talk a little bit about the LA club scene too. I mean, for those who don't know, I used to go to LA in the 90s, and in the early 90s, you could lay down in the street in downtown Los Angeles. It was as dead could be at 5:15. It's not like that anymore. A decade or so ago, there was an enormous influx of creative people, not just electronic music producers, but artists, writers, all kinds of folks. And you're in the middle of all of that. How has that been for you in terms of your creative process and your creative juices?
Yeah, so it's exciting for us because we were trying to, when we created the brand of DTLA, we were noticing the transformation of the city as well as kind of the scene here. Underground music's been going on here forever. They've had those parties going on here forever. But for the main clubs in LA, when I first moved here, in 2010, they were still playing top 40 stuff in all the clubs. And over the past, 5 to 6 years, underground music has been the primary, source of music in all these clubs. So what we were trying to say is, okay, we're seeing the transformation of the city at the same time we're seeing the transformation of the music scene as well too. So for me, that was exciting. And obviously when you come out of Icon Collective, you meet a lot of very, very talented folks coming out of there. So just being here and then being around where a lot of people artists are in the art district, not too far away from here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just an exciting place for music because I think the West Coast has its own sound, here you know.
Well, it always has.
So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Northern California house music, and that's what a lot of people thought of as house music.
Yeah.
That particular sound and that scene, even though LA had the Marcus Wyatts and Doc Martin and people like that.
Right.
But yeah, they're very different sounds.
Yeah, so they're like, you know, one of the things I'm working on right now is creating an article about the emerging sound of underground sound here. And basically what we're going to be talking about is like the emerging labels coming out of Los Angeles, us being one of them, and Hood Politics and Slightly Sizzled. And basically, you know, talk about like, well, how is our sound different and why is it emerging, and, you know, what trends is that kind of setting. So like, to me, like right now, only be doing the label for a couple of years, I'm like, to me, I'm kind of humble because it's like, you know, I guess I'm part of the history now of of the music.
You've made your mark. But also, you know, you had a great idea of creating a label and a brand that sort of embodied the place where you were making the music. I mean, that, you know,
Right.
DTLA is exactly what you are.
Right. So you know, that I get asked, you know, how do you describe the sound, you know, of what you do? And you know, because I had UK tech house training, but I still like the synth and the hits and the kind of the bass sounds that the West Coast is known for, you know, either Dirty Bird in, you know, Northern California. So I've kind of like melded those two kind of together, where we still get the grooves and the vocal hooks that UK, and then I still, you know, add a little bit of that, you know, that West Coast kind of flavor to it. That's kind of how that's how I describe my sound a bit when I'm asked that question.
Let's talk a little bit about DJing outside of the studio. We'll get back to the studio in a second, but what are your favorite kinds of gigs to actually play? Where can you name a gig or two that is the most memorable for you, and why?
Sure. I playing in the box at the Ministry of Sound was very memorable for me.
That ain't bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just because like some of the first albums I had were the annual from, you know, from it. So like for me to actually go into there, I have a video of me just walking in. You know, it was, you know, it was part emotion and part nostalgic and part of like, oh wow, you know, this is like never could have dreamed that.
Pretty good monitors, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I played my worst set of my life because I was so nervous up there. But like, you know, besides that, it was a good time.
Yeah, quite an honor as well to play in that place. You've played Burning Man. You've played places in LA, Amsterdam. Anything else that come to mind?
Yeah, I played in Barcelona a couple times. You know, I have some good friends out there that have played. I played in Mexico. You know, it's interesting is kind of like where I am. Just when the pandemic hit, we kind of like internally, like people I circle with, you know, the bus was about to take off when the pandemic hit. So, you know, we kind of still kept our, you know, our heads down and stayed the course here. So we're, you know, we're excited for once the restrictions are lifted here, so that we can get back at a potential tour coming up.
And Redux Saints has music that comes out on labels beyond DTLA as well, correct? How do you work? How does that work?
Well, you know, like I think any producer, you know, you go through the submission process because obviously I went to Toolroom Academy. You know, I know everyone who I can personally send my tracks to. But you know, like what you get to a certain point though is with a lot of these labels is that, you know, sometimes it's better to start your own label if you have your own sound and just get your music out. Because like I think that like what I saw with myself is that I always want to move forward. I don't want to change a track 400 times for a label, you know, that you know, to do it. So, you know, we've kind of gotten to the point where, you know, if I get a request these days for a track, you know, from a bigger label, you know, I'll create a track catered towards that label. But for the most part, I'm really focusing on kind of building the brand of DTLA. But I do have some big releases coming up with Toolroom, Incorrect, 909, freaking 909. So yeah, I still release on it, but the primary focus of the releases right now have been on DTLA.
Let's talk a little bit about your production side. Coming into your, I guess, production career, which producers influenced you the most? The ones where you would sit down and break down a track and go, oh my God, how does he do that?
Yeah, so I have a relationship with Dean Marriott, who's D. Ramirez. He was kind of the mentor for the Toolroom project, and absolutely nicest guy on the planet, but like so skilled in like doing it, and just like how he explains stuff to me, you know, and to that I could have spent years on YouTube trying to read it, you know, and I really valued all that time that I had, and I think it really helped kind of shape my sound. So D. Ramirez is one of those guys that just like, you know, I have utmost respect for, and, you know, just really just quality human being. I can't say much enough about. One of the guys that brought me back when I started my software company that I really started getting into music was Maceo Plex. Back when, back in 2012 through 2000, maybe like 15, 16, you know, I absolutely loved his music back then, and the grooves and the style of his music and stuff like that.
Great parties too.
Yeah, and I think when I started producing, I was trying to go in that direction, but you know, my trance roots kept on coming into it. So, you know, going the whole tech house route, you know, was kind of, you know, I don't think that's what I originally intended when I first started learning music.
No, the trance guys don't have a whole lot of, you know, grooves. That's not really what they do, but it's interesting that you take the melody from that world and adapt it to what you're doing now. Talk a little bit about that trance background, because you keep alluding to it.
Yeah, so I mean, used to love, you know, Paul Oakenfold back in the day. I think what we used to do is after going to the clubs, we'd come back and had a joke. We said back to the basics, meaning like, hey, if no one could agree on what album to put in, we just always go to Transport, and everyone would be like, okay, great track, you know, great album, great album. So all the guys, you know, that we used to listen, man, running blank. There are like so many of them right now, but.
Oh, like 90s guys? Like
yeah,
Paul Van Dyke and...
Paul Van Dyke. Oh, man. I'm drawing a blank right now. I can pull them all up on the internet right now. But then there's a lot. I mean, a lot of guys that came through, like, through Chicago. What was it? I don't know. Let's come back to that question. I'll have to think about it.
That's all right. So let's get into your studio a little bit. We don't have to, you know, go through every single plugin you have here, but curious to know your DAW, some plugins, monitors, hardware. Do you have anything, you know, you have any old hardware, or are you all in the box?
Yeah, so I use Ableton, and I use a UAD interface, and I use a lot of the plugins from UAD.
Okay.
Expensive as hell, but I like them. I use a lot of Waves plugins on my master chain, FabFilter for all my EQing, and then various bunch of other stuff, you know, for do it. But I would say, you know, if you're a beginner, I think one thing I would recommend is that, you know, someone's always going to tell me, hey, you got to get this plugin, and I think I was a kind of, I wouldn't say a victim of that Icon, but we would sit in the synth class, and they would show Anna, then they would show, you know, 9 million other, you know, stuff from like Massive and stuff like that. And then, you know, I would go home and buy it every time. And then, you know, you realize is that you really should just have like one or two that you always go to when you're actually producing. Just learn.
Right.
No,
and it also depends on what kind of music you're making and what kind of sounds you require.
Right, right. So, you know, you'd use different ones for different types, you know, like for synth hits versus like doing melodic pads and stuff like that.
So how do you lock in your grooves? Where do you get those?
Okay, so grooves is a form of kind of like how I build it out first. You know, it's a little bit trial and error, but we obviously we want to get a kick that fits, you know, whatever sound that's kind of formulating in my head, and then we go percussion. You know, any groove elements that might make it, and we add the hats on it, and then I stick in the bass line into it. So if I feel like that's capturing me enough, then I can kind of work that in. And I'm like any other producer. You can sit there with your hi-hats and fumble around with them for 2 weeks. You know, at some point, what I've learned is like less is better when it comes to certain albums.
Less is more, as they say.
But like what happens a lot of times is that I'll create the groove, But then I'll find the vocal to put on top of it, and then I adjust the groove to kind of fit the vocal parts into it so that they kind of lead into one another. Hence creating like a unified groove where you're kind of like every part kind of leads into the next part. Where
are you getting the vocal snippets from? Do you bring somebody in, or you just find them on old records?
All over the place. I'll go to YouTube. So a little secret of mine, like I'm a huge fan of certain things. Like I like 90s movies. I found some stuff, where it's stuff from, you ever familiar with what the Electric Company was?
The Electric Company in the 70s?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, from Boston, Mass. 90210. Yeah, I watched that. Yeah, PBS show after Sesame Street.
So I'll grab stuff from that.
That's a good one. I think Morgan Freeman was on that.
Yep, that's exactly one of them that I grabbed from it, because he does the one where he's the DJ. He goes, no sucking, no jive. So then I'll search for stuff for the Jimmy Kimmel Show. I pulled the Samuel Jackson poem, Stay the Bleep Home. It's almost like a lot of times, there's a lot of times I'll find stuff and I think it's going to work until I try to put it over a groove, and it absolutely doesn't work. But, I get these ideas in my head, kind of like I'll watch a movie like Airplane and I'll try to find something on there, like something that might be funny said or something that hasn't been used before. But I also use Splice. I search packs. I'm also one of those guys. I'll try to find a pack first and then use and abuse.
Completely done. Yeah.
And then use and abuse that pack. I think maybe there was one where it was like kind of spoken words, and I used maybe for like 3 or 4 of my songs for it. So it's kind of a variety of methods I go to do it. But sometimes lately, I've been trying to kind of lean more towards using a vocalist, or maybe coming up with things for a vocalist to say for my tracks, because I think, you run into it. Like one of the things, like, is it an automatic, no, is if, you're an AR person and you say, oh, I've heard that sample before, that's automatic, you get like in the X Factor, the big X.
Yeah, the days of black box are over. Yeah. So I wanted to also get into, are there any monitors that you're particular to?
So the ones I use are Eve Audio. It's the ones I've been using for years. But I mean, I had Rockets before, and like the studio versions of it. And when I can tell you that, like, the difference between going to a quality set of monitor speakers versus using, obviously, you have to, a little bit more on the expensive side of stuff to, when you go to those quality speakers. But
you get what you pay for. Yeah.
Oh man, it was like night and day, because my mixes would be heavy. Like the low end was kind of louder than the mids and the highs. So my mixes were always like that because of the speakers. When I got the Eve along with the subwoofer, I was able to balance stuff out and hear the different, I could turn off the rest of the stuff, just listen to the sub. Was it fitting in well with the kick?
Get the real flat response.
Yeah. So I mean, that's super important, is to find a good pair of speakers for that. Now, some people have good hearing. I think I damaged my hearing a little bit when I was going to clubs when I was younger, because I think I went to one instance where I think I saw Judge Jules play, and basically stood next to the speaker the entire night. I think I had ringing in my ears until like the next Wednesday from a Saturday. So I kind of need that type of that. I try not to mix in my headphones anymore, because it tends to.
Did you ever get any tinnitus?
I think I have a small ringing consistent in it, but it's something that I don't think about.
Right, it's not so bad that you got to leave the TV on.
Yeah, exactly. And I do use ear protection now.
That was my next question.
Which is super. Now, some of the cooler things that, like, you've seen on the V10, the Pioneer, it actually has an EQ for the booth, which is huge now, because you can take out those screeching highs and just hear the low end, which I think was part of the problem sometimes, even when I was DJing, is because the monitor speaker would be blasting in my ear, and it's like the highs that kill you. So,
okay. we got a few more minutes, so I just wanted to get into a couple of your more recent tracks. We did discuss Bad Like Me a little bit, which I believe is coming out tomorrow. You had a track called Take Me Up, and they're a little similar in the sense that they're soulful and they've got some real rhythms and real grooves going on. Talk a little bit about how you assemble those tracks. They're not exactly similar, but they're somewhat similar.
Yeah, so kind of similar to like we discussed. I focus primarily on the groove first. So the groove must be unique and catch your head going. So that would be starting with a kick, adding percussion elements, then putting on hats, then adding in the bass line to fit into that groove, so in the pocket, so that it works. Once I've gotten that and I'm happy with that, then I'll move on to finding a vocal hook. And I won't go past like 33 or 40 bars. I'm kind of doing a build up to a drop with the vocal hook, kind of being, possibly right before the drop.
That's a very satisfying number, though.
Yeah, but that to me, I have to nail that before I go on with the track. So I think in my early days, I was building out the entire track, and it was just like
too much.
You come back and you make like some of the things like down road in your track, you'd be focusing on when you should have been focusing just on that the main part of the track, the meat of it, which was the idea that kind of taught myself that, like, don't go past that until you're satisfied. That'll kind of shorten the length of the entire track if you kind of aren't distracted by stuff down the road.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about socials and your activity there and how important they are for Redux Saints, DTLA, all of the above. How much effort do you personally put into it, or do you have somebody who does it for you?
I do it all. So the socials for Redux Saints, Placebo Effect, and DTLA, I do it. And as I've gotten a tad bit older, I wake up earlier. So I'm up super early, 4:30 a.m., checking song stats, checking SoundCloud, checking, things that may provide content for that day. I've kind of heard through some articles and some people saying is that people plan it out like weeks in ahead. And, I can plan to say, okay, we're going to have a release video on the release day and pre-order on the pre-day, but all the days in between are kind of like, kind of reactive versus proactive. One of the things, though, I do, which try to add some, kind of my personality to labels, I do something on Mondays that basically says Mondays suck. And I find something where someone's like, doing some damage to themselves or something like that,
Okay.
Falling in manure or like,
a little nihilism on Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the social media, whether it's kind of the job that no one wants to do, but you have to do it. It helps your reach. It helps your brand. It gets the identity of the brand across with it. Different social media platforms require different types of posts and content. Some I do very well on some I don't do great on others. But yeah, I mean, when you're doing a label and your monikers, it takes a couple hours a day to do it, and it becomes a lot of work.
Are you at all thinking about demographics at all for the label or Redux Saints, or are you just all music for everybody at all times?
Well, I mean, as you mean, some of this information is available. Like if you go to like Spotify, Spotify's, provides some of the demographics that actually, in terms of, specific things like that. But I would say the most part, demographic-wise, we kind of open it up to basically anyone that likes the music. I mean, demographics kind of build out like when things come online, like where Spotify's popular is not the same popularity, and where Deezer's popular is not popular. That so you tend to get different things, and like I think the U.S. focuses a lot on Spotify, but from what I understand, Apple's the bigger platform here than actually that. But but actually managing stuff on Apple is so much more difficult than Spotify. It's why everyone focuses on Spotify. Making a playlist, is so easy on Spotify versus, Apple or Deezer or Google. I mean, it's just kind of the ease of use for it.
So let's talk a little bit about what 2021 is looking for the label, your artist career, but also for dance music and the DJ world in general. Events seem to be like they're on the verge of coming back. You mentioned you're talking about a Vegas residency. Amsterdam Dance Event looks like it's going to happen. DJ Times, we're doing our show, a DJ Expo in Atlantic City in August. How are you viewing the rest of 2021?
Well, I think seeing the bus will take off. That's the hope here. I'm doing a Desert Hearts recording takeover on Saturday. So that'll be on April 15th. We're going to be booked at in Vegas in May. I'm having the Toolroom release party for the official James Brown remix that's coming out June 4th on Toolroom.
Awesome. What's the venue in Vegas?
It's called Tempo Ultra Lounge, and it's under new management recently, probably about a year, and they're very familiar with all the Los Angeles-based acts. So we're naturally going to start a residency there. Chicago-wise, Florida, we're getting some interest from them as well too. Internationally, we always want to have some presence at Amsterdam Dance Event. I highly recommend, if anyone's in the dance scene, to make that your priority conference that you go. I was booked for 8 gigs in Miami for the for the Miami Music Week. So
WMC last week.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a disappointment. But I'm thinking that we'll get to equal to or more for the next year as well too. So, I have friends in Barcelona that we're going to be doing stuff. We have a couple artists that we've worked with in Germany. We're probably going to do some events there. I think what we're trying to do is, establish a little bit of the U.S. base here with our parties, and then take it globally to like where our other artists are kind of calling home.
Is LA going to ramp up anytime soon? Any idea what's going on?
Yes, they actually said, I believe an announcement just came out from the governor. I don't know if it's to combat his recall, but
we have similar issues here in New York. Yeah.
I think I could be wrong, but I think he said everything will be back open by, I think it's June 15th.
Okay.
So, I mean, again, LA has been unique in the county here because we had it very bad, is that they literally had everything has been, I don't even know how clubs can survive out here for being closed for that long. It's going to be sad to see, if any died in the process here, but literally, no mass gatherings have been, I just got my second shot. So that's finally said to me, like, okay, now it's okay to, think about it, to be honest,
Yeah, I know the feeling. I'm getting my second one soon. You know what? I hadn't checked out the chat real quick. Let me toss a couple things out to you. What socials does Redux feel work the best for you?
Well, it depends on what you're doing. I look at Instagram. Instagram's focused on you as the artist. They want to know who you are. So a lot more videos of yourself, a lot more, kind of videos of you DJing. Those tend to do the best. When you go to Twitter, I feel like is like where you spill your feelings. I don't know if you guys have seen
good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah. So that's a place, and obviously the difference between Instagram is you can't do a link to click onto something unless you do it as a story. So, more personal announcements, you being yourself is Instagram. Twitter, believe it or not, it's still very, very popular with artists. So I wouldn't overlook that if you're planning to launch your socials around that. That's more for kind of like your feelings, like commenting on stuff, also events as well too. And Facebook is, it's hard to say what Facebook is these days. Now, recently they just converted your pages over to profiles, and I don't know if that's so you're supposed to get better engagement as your artist as a profile. I have no idea, but I kind of look at like Facebook is like the necessary evil. You just need to put it there anyway, so you know you might as well do it.
Yeah, I get that. Well, cool. We've done almost an hour, and I want to thank Jason Miller, also known as Redux Saints, the founder of Deep Tech Los Angeles label. Jason, thank you so much for doing this. And everybody check out Beatport or whatever your favorite platform is. Tomorrow, Bad Like Me comes out, and I think you're going to like it.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks.
Alrighty, thanks.